Greetings and welcome to No BS Baking. You got JP here. Today I want to go through a few videos I found online. Now one's dealing with puff pastry and one demo on the 10-minute sourdough for lazy people apparently. Now both are interesting and I'll be doing my job going through these to clarify a few important aspects of these demos. So without further ado, let's go. This first video is coming out of Indonesia by Vinastar. The product looked beautiful, so I wanted to review it and give my opinions and any recommendation or clarification I see appropriate. So let's look at this recipe. Now as usual, I converted any of the volumetric measurements to grams and put it into Baker's Present so we can evaluate it. The first thing to note is the author's call for strong bread flour. It's always best for pastry when the dough and laminations need to carry a lot of fat. Now the author doesn't state whether it's salted or unsalted butter, but by looking at the quantity of salt used at only 0.6%, I assume it's salted butter. I noted that 16 pieces were made from this dough, so if you take the total batch weight, including the roll-in butter, each piece will weigh, say, about 55 grams after trimming for each of the dough pieces. Now this dough is a stiff one at about 40% hydration, and she really mixed it very little. This is a technique used by some to optimize the flakiness of the pastry. Now think about pie dough. The best crusts are just crudely brought together to ensure that nice flaky crust. Now I liked a lot of things about this video. I like the rolling of the pastry into the tube and then the one bookful to create those beautiful layers. You know, she's careful and detailed with respect to shaping through all phases. I mean, nicely done. And the proof is in the product, which in my opinion looks amazing. Now on the other side of the coin, there's not really any mention of pastry temperature. In this process, she rolls through the steps in a continuous flow with even small rest times on the counter. Now, although this appears to work pretty good for this demo, I always recommend working with pastry in around the 50 to 60 degree Fahrenheit window. Cooler dough and butter, nicer laminations as a rule. Salt. Now, generally I recommend using unsalted butter and adding salt to your desired amount on the dough side. However, with a bit of math, you could make it all work. Now, she didn't mention much about the rollout thickness, but I think the 8 to 10 millimeters I noted looks about good. In general, I love the video and the product produced, and give Vinastar's puff pastry an enthusiastic thumbs up.
Howdy folks, I'm Ben Starr, the Ultimate Food Geek. Welcome back to my messy kitchen. It has been 3 years since I introduced my super simple sourdough for lazy people method. And tens of thousands of people all over the world are now using this method to bake sourdough bread with practically...
Now, I've never seen this guy's YouTube channel before, but I wanted to see what he's doing with his simple sourdough for lazy people. So let's start by looking at his recipe. So firstly, he recommends all-purpose flour. And yes, you can make almost any bread with all-purpose. However, as I've stated in my last video on mixing, when you're dealing with long fermentation products like sourdough, most all bakers will opt for high-protein bread flour over AP. Higher protein gives better volume and stands up much better to bacterial and enzymatic action over extended rest or bulk fermentation times. My initial guess, little oven spring and dense texture. Now he also adds 4% salt to his dough, and in his own words, by design. Now this is really a high amount of salt, pretty much double the amount normally used in breads. His explanation is that he wants the high level of salt to control fermentation so he has a larger window of time before double in size is attained. I mean, scientifically salt will retard yeast activity, but man, double the salt? Water's at 68%, and with the water in the starter, his total hydration is around 70% mark, which is a nice level for new bakers to work with when learning the ins and outs of making higher hydration products. The batch weight is a hefty kilo, and we can assume that even if he loses 20% over the more than 1 hour he bakes, it'll still come in at around 800 grams. Now, I'm not going to bore everyone with the step-by-step dough preparation, as you can check out his video online. But the process he demonstrates is a no-knead method, where the dough is basically just brought together, and long rest times or bulk fermentation is where all the gluten is developed and conditioned. Although I don't personally like no-knead breads, they're easy and definitely require less actual handling and fiddling with stretch and folds and the like.
Now, this goes into a cold oven at 425 degrees for 45 minutes.
So anyway, he did his overnight bulk fermentation and now he's ready to bake. He claims that he used to be one of those 500-degree sourdough bakers, but now has opted for the start with the cold oven program. Now, although I had a number of people comment that this process works for them, I don't really like it, and here I've listed some reasons why.
Of my loaf pan. Look at that. Beautiful. All right, now both loaves have been in for a full hour, so we're going to check them. And that looks perfect. But at 45 minutes covered.
Now, the product, in my view, is typical of a no-knead bread process. They're often short in volume, more dense crumb, and peaks in the middle of the loaf versus an evenly expanded product like the sour from my last review. Now, both of these have similar scaling weights, with the big difference being proper gluten development, which is always an issue with no-knead bread. That being said, the product looked okay based on the amount of direct handling time it received, so as a no-knead product, I say it turned out quite nice, and definitely as expected. In summary, it's always best to use a strong bread flour for long fermentation products. However, as demonstrated in this video, AP will work for most bread products. How well? Well, that's another story, and dependent upon the product you're trying to make and the final result you are happy with. 4% salt is double the base standard. However, if a salty product is what you want, I mean, who can say anything to that? For fermentation, use the refrigerator instead of high salt. No-knead breads don't take much actual work, but I will say that a few stretch and folds can make a big difference in your finished product. Starting from a cold oven is not something that I would advise. However, if this works for you, then have at it. I like the bake temperature, and I like the cold Dutch oven, but placed into a preheated oven, please. 1 hour is a long time to bake basically a white bread. Now, if you can bake it faster, then you'll retain a lot more of the moisture and have better eating quality over a longer period of time. Now, he's a little cheeky, and I kind of like that. And he does provide some good tips and advice with respect to sour culture, Dutch oven types, importance of water quality, and some other bits and bobs. Now, he's entertaining to watch, and his product seems decent for what it is. So if no-knead sourdough is what you're looking for, give the channel a look.